right, well, it's the lockdown version of Marawa TV. And you know what? We're going to go all the way through to the United Kingdom, and that's where former Liverpool superstar, he's a legend in his own right, a former colleague of mine, John Barnes, is standing by to chat to us. John Barnes, thank you so much, man. How's the lockdown treating you?
The lockdown's not too bad. The sun's shining, which is good. And as you know, Robert, I used to travel a lot when I used to come to South Africa, and that's a lot of traveling. So I'm quite happy to be at home with the family. Not under these circumstances, but yeah, I'm having a little bit of a downtime. And we can actually go out and walk around, so it's not too bad in the little village I live in. Just have to keep our distance.
I was actually going to ask you about that because, you know, with the lockdown restrictions, I know that they've added another 3 weeks in the UK. How does that impact your ability to move around or jog or walk the dog, etc.?
Well, we're not as densely populated as Joburg, where I live. As much as I'm in Merseyside, I live in a little village. So there are not many people here, maybe 10,000 people. So, you know, we can go out for a walk once a day. We can go to the shops if you have to get essentials. And we keep 6 feet apart. So it's fairly simple. I should imagine in Joburg that'd be difficult to do. So the kids are at home. We're going to homeschool them. They're off now, you know, Easter holidays. So yeah, listen, there are people much worse off than me and worse off than ourselves. So I'm not feeling sorry for myself at all.
But how's it been taken, though, generally, John? Because, I mean, it's been a worldwide impact, reaching over 2 million people who've been affected. I was looking at the stats when it comes to the United States of America, the stats when it comes to the UK. We know what's been happening in Italy, in Spain, etc. Do you think that the human aspect of what coronavirus is all about has had the kind of impact, or are people just looking at stats and trying to move on with life?
Well, it's getting there because, of course, when it first happened, we all assume, as we all do as human beings, oh, it'll never happen to us. It won't affect us. But as time goes on and there are more deaths and you can see more people getting it all around the world, particularly in Western countries, that's when it's really apparent that, you know, this is serious and we have to take it seriously. Because, of course, I suppose since World War II, where people were affected by something like this, no one's ever... Of course, in Africa, or some African countries they have, but in the Western world, they haven't. So people are a little bit blasé towards it to the start in terms of, well, let's still go out. But now everything is shut down and people are now getting used to it. We know the seriousness of it. So people are now adapting and getting used to it.
All right. I mean, when you talk about that, it directly affects what you and I have been known for, John, which is to get ourselves involved in the beautiful game of football. You as a former player and then a pundit, and then on my side as well. The debates around what should happen next lie largely with what?
It lies with the government and the scientists to tell us when it's time to get back to normal. You can't treat football differently. You can't say people love football so much, so let's get back quicker. Let's play behind closed doors. Let's get some, you know, some kind of thing going before the rest of the country is ready to. This is a very serious problem. This is life and death. So football, sport, music, please, in England, you know, people like to go to the pub. And as much as you're talking about football being hard for people to take, the lack of it, not being able to go to the pub is even a bigger issue. But of course, we then have to do it. We have to do it. So we have to be guided by the government, by the scientists to then say, when it is safe for normality to return, that is when we will return as footballers. We will return as cricketers, as rugby players, as people who just want to go to work. And as I said, there are people much worse off than footballers and football. You know, people are going to lose their businesses, lose their jobs, lose their lives. So for us to then say, let's make an excuse or, you know, do something in terms of trying to get us back to our normal lives quicker than normal people, that's the wrong thing to do. And we quickly have to forget about that and say, let's get this problem sorted first.
You know where the little conundrum comes in, John, is the fact that somehow people believe that if you get the teams to play behind closed doors, that solves a problem, not having the fans in. My argument was always the fact that the 11 versus 11, those are human beings. It is a contact sport. So how are you safeguarding the players, even if you have the fans not there?
Well, of course, if you then say to the players, keep 6 feet apart, then, you know, on the pitch, then of course that'll solve the problem, but that's not going to happen. So even 11 players against 11 players with a referee, players beside each other, you're going into tackles, you know, that is not social distancing. So as I said, if we're going to say that we have social distancing, people can't come within contact of each other. You cannot make an exemption for football. And as I said, football, and you shouldn't. You know, as much as People are talking about, we want to see football. We want to see people living. Life is more important. And we want to see people getting their businesses and getting their lives back in order, because a lot of people, not only losing their lives, they'll lose their livelihoods. They'll lose their homes if this continues. And that's the most important thing, to get that sorted first, rather than thinking selfishly about how quickly can we get back to playing football, even watching football.
Now, when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it here, where your team, Liverpool, 25 points ahead, everybody says now, well, just give them the trophy, give them the title. But it's bigger than that, because Liverpool aren't playing against themselves every day, and lower down in the divisions, they also have a right to say whether they get promoted or relegated. I don't know what your take is in terms of, do you give it to Liverpool, or how do you go about doing it?
For the integrity of football, you have two choices. You either wait until we are able to get back to normality and finish the season, which means another 9 games in the Premier League, maybe 14, 15 in the Championship, which you can run through. You can rush through those games and not worry about next season. Next season may have to be delayed by 3, 4, 5, 6 months. We don't know, because we don't know whether they can play again. If we're going to stop the season now, for the integrity of football, you can't say, give the title to Liverpool, but then there's no relegation, no promotion. If you say the season stops now, and the positions that are in place now are the final positions, then the bottom 3 have to go down. Leeds, West Brom and Fulham have to come up. The bottom 3 in the Championship have to go down. And of course, then if Fulham comes up, who's 3rd place in the Championship, the teams who would have played them in the playoff, who are 1 point behind them, could have said, well, we could have come up in the playoffs. But the whole idea of just giving Liverpool the Championship and not honouring the rest of the divisions in terms of the positions they're in is wrong. And a lot of people have said, well, because there's so much money involved, yes, Liverpool are going to win the Championship, but then there's no relegation. You can't have that. You either honour the positions as they are now, or you finish the season. And I don't know why people are worrying about next season, because they're talking about, let's scrap this season. It's like I don't know what the school system is there, but you have 16-year-olds who are taking their what's called O-levels. I don't know if you call them a trick over there, who aren't able to take them. Are you going to say to them, well, you can't take them, so scrap that, and let's wait for next year's metric or O-levels to be done? You can't just discount what's going on now. My son is going through a fellowship to be a consultant, plastic surgeon, and he is 9 months through his 12-month fellowship, and they're about to cut it short. And of course, they have next year, they have another group of doctors who are going to go for their consultancy. And you can't say to my son, because you're 3 months and you're not able to finish it, that, well, you're now forgotten about, because we have next year's ones to worry about, and we have to get them through. You have to say, well, they also have to be delayed. And football is exactly the same. Why are we worrying about next season and it is very easy to finish this season? We don't know when, because we don't know when we're going to be able to play. But once we're given the all clear to play, and I'm not talking about from a Liverpool's point of view, I'm talking about Leeds, Championship, League One. We are now said it is clear to play. Let us have 2 months. That's what it will take. 2 months to finish this season. And if it means starting next season in January, we don't know when, that's the right thing to do.
Okay. I think that's a refreshing approach, though, John, because everybody's thinking about the here and now, trying to get it done, trying to get it finished. And we've seen what's been happening with the Bundesliga and anywhere else. It's been a case of, let's try get this done so that we can get back to. But your approach, for me, makes absolute sense, is that if we drag it on for another 2 months, then let's try to drag it on for another 2 months, because we were closer to the end than we are in the beginning. So worry about finishing what we have now, but finish it on the field of play with fans, I would imagine. John, I don't know if that is what you're saying.
Absolutely. But Robert, it may not be 2 months. It may be 6 months. It may be technically maybe 2 years. We don't know. So at this uncertain time, for us to be looking forward to say, well, because we're thinking about next season starting, we don't know when. We don't know when we're able, and we're hoping that it may be 2 months, it may be 3 months. But until we have a definitive time as to when we can actually do it, why worry about something after that when we haven't even finished this? And it's not just about football, because there are lots of different things that people have to finish rather than just discounting it. So in this uncertain time, I think that people are too quick, even the government, in terms of when are we going to be able to go out again? We don't know. And there's nothing wrong with saying we don't know. But of course, politicians, because they feel they have the answers to everything, have now said, okay, in 3 weeks' time. It could be 3 months' time. We don't know. And people should understand that if you just say, in these uncertain, unprecedented times, we do not know, that's fine. That's fine. Let's just go along with whatever the scientists really say.
I think the biggest problem, though, John, as you know, that with football, it's become such a commercialized entity that everybody worries about the rands and the cents and the pounds and the dollars and everything else. saying that with the TV rights aspect, obviously now the TV channels right across the world are sitting there who would normally pump all the live football. They've got nothing to show, but then the clubs are there also not training, not playing. So everyone says they're going to lose mega millions, if not close to billions of dollars or pounds or rands because of the TV rights thing. How do you factor in people coming in with the monetary aspect versus saving lives?
So, okay, those television companies will be okay. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but they'll be fine. What about the people who will lose their lives, lose their houses, lose their livelihoods, and never be able to recover? So why are we worrying about people who will be okay? Football will be fine. And the right thing to do is to forget about football. Let's look at it from the human aspect to say, when are we able then to go back into going to work in the shop, to go into work as a bus driver, and to go to work as a footballer, and to have enjoyment as a football fan, to go and watch football, rather than discounting everybody else. And as I said, because we really don't know, even if we're talking about forget this season, scrap this season, because next season we're going to make lots of money. We don't know when. That could be 3 years. It could be. We don't know. It could be 3 months. We don't know. So until we have a definitive time as to when and then we can have a better plan. Once there's a definitive time that we can categorically say it's going to be 3 months, it's going to be 6 months, it's going to be 2 weeks, but a definitive time, we can then plan for the future. But what we're doing is planning for the future without knowing when that future is actually going to start, which doesn't make sense. So even when we're talking about from a financial point of view, which is right, billions of pounds in football, but even if we take a decision now, we're going to scrap this season because there's billions of pounds in football, we're going to get next season started. When? It could be 6 months. It could be a year. We don't know. So as I said, the timing is so important for us to have a definitive time as to know when life can start again. Then we can start planning, because all that's happening is people are arguing with each other over whether we should start in 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, what should be done. And until we have a time factor into it, that when we can actually start life again, it means nothing. This 3-week lockdown means nothing, because in 2 weeks' time, something could happen that can say, we can end the lockdown now. So we don't really know. All they're doing is delaying to say 3 weeks' time, we'll come up and tell you again how long that's going to be, which I suppose they have to do, but it really means nothing.
I mean, everybody talks in little pockets to say that football will change indefinitely forever after we've come out of this. For you, what fundamentally will change? I mean, yes, everybody wants to be kind. We want to line up. We want to shake hands, player, referees, player, and whatever dignitaries that are there as per normal and per standard. Do you see things like that being scrapped completely now, and a different way of doing things? Because you got ball boys, you got all sorts of people that are affected, whether it's first aid, it's the coaches, it's the bench, it's the fans. Everybody is a part of football, but things will have to change, John.
Well, I think once it's safe to shake hands and to embrace people, we'll do that again. I don't think football will change in that respect. Yeah. Humanity may change in terms of having more respect and empathy and love for each other for a short period of time, until we forget what had happened in 2020, because of course we have very short memories when we go back to being the same selfish people that we always were. We would like to think we won't. I don't think football will fundamentally change. I think that there will be a lot of clubs who may not exist anymore, maybe not in the Premier League, but a lot of clubs who will be in a lot of trouble, depending on how long this goes on for. So that will change, particularly in England, where you have a 4-division professional league, where you have teams in the lower divisions who are struggling anyway, who may go out of existence because of this. But I don't think the game of football fundamentally will change, no more so than rugby, cricket, life generally, because, football is exactly the same. It's a part of life. So maybe there will be some adaptations to make. But I think once we get over this period, and it may not be 6 months after, it may not even be a year after, but we'll get back to seeing the same old aggression on the terraces, people not liking each other, people abusing each other, people being racist towards each other. I think we'll get back to the bad old days, should we say, unfortunately.
I know you've been such a strong advocate when it comes to anti-racism and all sorts of discussions that you've had through the years, John. And the one thing that really struck a chord with me was when the fans, given their hatred for VAR, were able to get to stadia with banners, voicing their opinions about their dislike for how VAR is being implemented in the EPL. And it brought to me a thought to say, but why couldn't they do that? The very same fans do the same thing in showing their disgust against racism each and every time, especially within the European circuit. I don't know how you see it now, whether things have improved. 2020, you see a reduction within the terraces when it comes to racism overall?
I've spoken about this so often, and as I always said, until we get rid of racism in society, it will exist in all walks of society whose football is one. Now, it's interesting now that we have the coronavirus here in England, because when in the original, when we first started and you saw the images of who our heroes were here in the NHS, they were all white. And of course, over 40%, 45% of the doctors here are from BAME and ethnic minorities. You got 20% of people in the NHS, but over nearly 50% are from ethnic minorities. But all the images we saw of who our heroes were when we had to clap the NHS, the pictures in the newspapers, the pictures on television, and all of the programs were of these white doctors and nurses who were saving us, and they were our heroes. Somebody's now actually brought that to the media's attention, and now they're being more inclusive. This is the way society is. Who are the heroes? Who are the ones who are worthy? Who do we have more empathy with? And until it's brought to their attention, then things stay the same. So of course now things are now changing. So if you look from a footballing perspective, those same fans who you're talking about are against VAR. They themselves are unconsciously biased towards ethnic minorities. They don't know it. And of course, they would love Mo Salah because he plays well. And they may love, and of course, you look at what Man United fans are now talking about Paul Pogba. Because when he played and he scored and he did well, then all of a sudden, when he didn't and he missed that penalty, you can see how people think about him, even Man United fans themselves, and they're racially abusing him. So it is to do with everybody, every individual thinking about how does he really feel about different groups of people. And as long as we just keep talking about it's a football problem and it's a problem in football and it's footballers, we absolve ourselves of responsibility to look at the rest of society. And the well-meaning people who would consider themselves not to be racially biased showed their true colors when this coronavirus started. And then we wanted to show images and feel sorry for and feel empathy with our heroes of the NHS who are saving our lives. And every one of them was white. Until recently, that is brought to their attention. So when you talk about how can people who disdain VAR and come together against VAR, what they have to do is they have to look at themselves and say, am I unconsciously biased towards groups of people based on what I've been wrongly told about them? I'm not blaming those people for being unconsciously racist, because this is the way we have been brought up for the last 200 years. And it's too simplistic to then say, we carry banners and we have kick it out, and every time there's a Champions League match, the Champions League teams hold up a banner saying, say no to racism, and throw it to the side. We have to look at ourselves, and the only way we can actually move forward is if we embrace it within ourselves to then say, I mean, you look at South Africa. You look at and the problems you have there in South Africa. As much as now the government policy is that we're one nation, we really know that the situation is different. And that's what we have to address. So, yes, I'm hoping once this lockdown comes for football to then look at itself and then to say, yes, let's be more loving, let's be more inclusive. Interestingly, we have now, after Brexit, we've just flown in a plane load of Eastern European workers to actually pick fruit. A plane load of Eastern European workers, because no one's doing it here. Those same ones who, before Brexit, were told that these people are coming to take our jobs. And we've heard that before all over the world. And now they've flown in because no one's picking the fruit, because these are not the jobs that people here want to do in England. So they've flown in Eastern Europeans who, in better times, before the coronavirus, we were getting rid of them. That's why Brexit was, because there are too many coming over. So I'm hoping for us to have a different outlook, not just in football, but in life generally. But unfortunately, knowing humanity, I don't think that's going to last too long.
Yeah, the ironies are very, very stark, though, John, overall. The one thing I never, ever got to ask you is that the very first time when you came to South Africa with your Liverpool team, I remember Bruce Grobler, man from across the border here in Zimbabwe, was also a part of that. And there was a certain Nelson Mandela who you had a very long chat to. I think about 2 hours. You had a great audience with him. Just that defining moment for you, and given historically, I mean, you could always look back at it now, but put yourself in that moment, what, 94, in that time period, and then here's Nelson Mandela, revered by everybody in the world, and here's John Barnes having an opportunity to be with him for a period of 2 hours. Just talk us through some of the things that went through your mind and in that conversation.
I've always said that, you know, I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but in Jamaica, we don't hold people on pedestals. You know, we don't have this celebrity mentality whereby somebody's and I'm not in awe of anybody. The two people I'm in awe of is my dad and Nelson Mandela. My father, as far as I'm concerned, was the most ethical, moral man ever. He was a colonel in the army. He was an upstanding citizen. He did what was right. He understood that. But the greatest thing I can say about Nelson Mandela was his humility. I've said this all the time, because you meet the greatest man in the world, and he never once said how great he was. All he kept stressing was how there were greater people than me, as much as that's debatable, meaning Stephen Biko, or other people who have been through the struggle, who never lived to see this day. So while people are showering me with all the praise, he was humble enough to recognize that there were people who came before him, people who were with him, people he considered to be his equal and even greater than him. And that's the sign of a good man, because I was just watching an interview with him again. Somebody just sent it to me, talking about humility being the greatest quality a human being can have, particularly coming from where he came from, because he said, through humility, the people, your oppressors, won't feel threatened.
Sure.
Won't feel threatened. And the greatest thing he actually did, the greatest thing he did, which he understood, and he said at that time in 94, he said to me, when he first started discussions about the takeover and change, he said he stressed to the people, the white people of South Africa, that we need you here to stay with us, because you have got the expertise that we don't have. For whatever reason, and we know the reason why we don't have the expertise, because we are disenfranchised, we're undereducated, we were destabilized, but you have the expertise, so we need you to stay with us to show us. So he didn't, after everything that happened to him, he didn't hate them. He didn't have any feeling of vengeance, any feeling of revenge, and everything that's actually happened to him. You would forgive him for feeling a little bit of hatred towards his oppressors and his country's oppressors, but he didn't, because he understood that this is the way the world is. If you look throughout history, you've had the oppressed and the oppressors, and the oppressed themselves are oppressed without knowing it. So he felt empathy towards them, and he said, for us to be great again, we need you to be by our side, to still, as they still do now, to lead us until we're able to do it ourselves. So as a man, his humility was the thing that touched me more than anything else, and his ability to forgive.
Yeah. No, 100%. And that's why, just trying to latch on to the wisdom that you would have had out of him, and given, again, your ability to have grown up, Jamaica, that's where, Mom was staying and stuff, is the here and now in 2020, modern day South Africa, where people have got, maybe not everybody, but the younger generation who might feel that a Mandela let them down, or he was a sellout, or it's important to highlight what you've just said, because now there's almost this war of attrition to say it's all or nothing. So you drag the one this side, you drag the other one that side. There's a fight for getting the land back again, which was taken away by the colonizers, etc. Is how do you redress that to try and get the people to understand things the way that Madiba did, and in your conversation with him, to try and allow everybody to say everyone has different strengths. Let us try put them together. Let us try work together. Or is it too late now because everybody sees themselves black, white, I want this, I want a portion of that. No, you can't have this. And then everybody's all just about themselves.
Well, first of all, not only in terms of people having different strengths, you have to look at the time scales and the eras. Because I remember being a young man and my dad used to say things to me and I'm thinking, well, Dad, because that was in your day, in my days, and now I see things happening. This coronavirus is a big lesson for us. This coronavirus, when we're talking about how terrible life is, think about people before, what they had to go through, what they had to endure for us to be here today, to go through the coronavirus, and much more hardship than they had to endure. And I've got a big bugbear about people who talk about sellouts or Uncle Toms. And I say to these people, because people, when I played in the early 80s, and not modern players saying to me now, how did you put up with that? And I wouldn't have put up with this, I wouldn't have done that. You got lots of black American comedians talking about, and I'm glad the comedians are very, very clever, talking about these young black kids now saying, if I was in slavery, I wouldn't have been a slave, I would have been the one. I said, well, we all like to think we'd be the hero, but we would go along with what's ever happening at that time, which is why I have no issue over 90% of the people in Germany in World War I. Yes, you have evil people, but 90% of them were people who were swept up in this and they went along with it. I can't say that I wouldn't have done that. In Rwanda, what went on in Rwanda, 90% of people, I met this man who actually killed his wife. He was a Hutu, she's a Tutsi, and he was forced to do it. But how can I judge that man? Because I wasn't there. So when you're talking about Uncle Toms or sellouts, I say, what do you think? And I'll use Uncle Tom as an example. What do you think Uncle Tom was going through in 1810? He was trying to keep his family safe. Do you feel he felt pride in doing what he had to do? How can I judge that man harshly and say, that's terrible because I wouldn't have done that? He's trying to keep his family safe. He's trying to stay alive. He's trying to keep his family together. So therefore you do what you have to do. And of course, in modern times, and I'll use football as an example, when they talk about what And I went through nothing compared to what people went through before. So as a young 17-year-old player, and people used to call me names and throw bananas on the field. And I think, well, look where I live. Look at the house, the car I drive. I go through this, 90 minutes. How am I then going to warn people who can't get jobs, can't get an education in the inner cities, and they're going to feel sorry for me? I'm going to represent them. I'm going to speak for them. So I will never judge anybody who went through what they went through. And if you look at young footballers now talking about how terrible it is, and I say, and I make no bones about it, people think I criticize Raheem Sterling and Jadon Sancho, and I don't. So, but when Jadon Sancho says that young footballers are going to be turned away from football because of the racism in football, and I say to Jadon, so you're from an inner city in London. You're now get racist abuse for 90 minutes every couple of weeks, probably not even for 90 minutes. You're going to give that up to go back to your inner city where you're being racially abused every single day because you can't get a job, you can't get the housing, you can't get an education. Your community, every single day of their lives, go through this. Football, there is no racism in football. There are racist incidents, and we have to separate the two. Racism is a structure that is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which is insidious in the society, which black people in the community go through that every day. That's what racism is. A racist incident is for 90 minutes, not even for 90 minutes, once a week, a black footballer gets racist abuse. Then for the other 6 days of the week, when he's not on the pitch and he's an accepted part of society because he's a footballer, like black actors and black celebrities, they're part of a society that pays them well, that doesn't discriminate against them. But for 90 minutes, they're discriminated against, which is a racist incident. And we believe that if we get rid of racist incidents, we get rid of racism. We can't. We can't. Racist incidents may or may not happen. But until we start to focus on racism, which is a continual, every single day struggle in society, for black people walking down the street, where all of a sudden a woman clutches her handbag, where you're going to a shop, somebody looks at you. I don't think that happens to black footballers. When a black footballer comes off the field and he goes into a shop or goes into a bar, he's let in first. Where's the racism there? His life that he actually leads, apart from some idiot shouting at him for 30 seconds in a football. Racism, and we have to separate the two, and we have to say what is more important and what is the way to get rid of racist incidents is to get rid of racism. We're trying to do it the other way around. So therefore, we then look at the racist fan who racially abuses Raheem Sterling, and then we have the footballer, and then we have Peter Bears, then we have Liam Neeson. We're looking for incidents. That's not going to change anything. So I know I kind of like diverted into something else you say, but what I say to the young people now is and they say they are respecting us and representing us by not putting up with what we had to put up with. And I say to them, if you really want to speak on behalf of me and represent me, yeah, don't speak for yourself. So instead of talking about how terrible it is in Germany, Jadon Sancho, or Raheem Sterling saying how terrible it is for those two racist fans to racially abuse you, look at your community and what's happening with the people in your community. You're from a black inner city community in London where kids can't get an education. They can't get jobs. And instead of saying how terrible it is for you, take them into a press conference when Raheem Sterling gave 100 kids cup final, semi-final tickets for Manchester City versus whoever they played. I said, take those 100 kids into a press conference and say, these kids aren't being given an education, vocation, opportunities, equal opportunities. That will do them much more good than giving them a cup final ticket. And then wait till next year to give him another cup final ticket. And he has the voice. I don't have the voice anymore because John Barnes is a player and I'm not a player anymore. So therefore I'm not relevant anymore. But you do. And not only do you have the voice, it is now widely accepted for any celebrity to then say how terrible racism is because people have to listen. They will listen to you. So rather than saying how terrible it is in Montenegro or Serbia or Germany, talk about what's going on in your own community, and that will help your community. I use South Africa as an example. I used when South Africa won the World Cup, rugby, just won the World Cup. They beat England in the Rugby World Cup. And they said how great it was because they had a black captain and black players in the team. And I remember when South Africa won the World Cup in 1995, 95, and they had Chester, and they said how great it is because we got a black player. I don't know whether it's a time thing, but 12 years later, they won it again, 2007, and they had 6 or 7 black players. Now they are in 2019, 12 years later, we've got a black captain. So how great it is in South Africa, a black captain. But I've been to South Africa, and you go around looking what's going around in South Africa. Forget about rugby. It may be better for the black rugby players or the black celebrities, But is it better for the average black person in South Africa now than it was 20 years ago? No, it's not. So we can kid ourselves that things are getting better because footballers aren't being racially abused. And Idris Elba's going to get an Oscar and Storms is going to get a BAFTA. But what's happening for the black community in the inner cities? And that's what we have to focus on. Because as long as we then keep saying things are getting better because we have a black captain, and then we have a black actor now getting Oscars, I mean, we then convince society that everything is okay because, look, we got a black president in the USA, so things must be great. But it's not. And until we start focusing on what's happening lower down, nothing will change. All we'll do is elevate certain black people out of, and I'd call it elevating them out of blackness. And my biggest bugbear now, and what I'm really trying to do now, is to change the image of the black man.
Oh, John Barnes, I love how you've wrapped it up, though, because that's exactly how we're going to pick it up. The next time you and I chat, we're going to be chatting the image of a black person, the image of a black man, the image of blackness as a whole, and how you should gather that sense of pride in carrying yourself forward, because there is that problem fundamentally all round. And thank you so much, man, Jay. Stay safe, my friend. All right, all the best. Cheers, John. Where do we even begin there, hey? John Barnes, thanking him so much indeed, all the way from the UK, right here on Marawi TV. Lessons learned in this lockdown. Stay tuned for more.